New in version 0.6.0 is our segmentation editor, which is kind of the foundation for all of our workflow steps going forward for how we mark regions of interest. In this case, we're going to be marking a splint outline, but we're going to start by just drawing a few regions on the anterior teeth to introduce you to the different ways that you can interact with the segmentation editor. In its simplest form, you can left click and draw out single points to mark an outline. The next point will always be connected to the selected point, which is bright green. And when you get to the end of your boundary, you can close the loop by selecting this, by left clicking on this outer ring. Okay, so let's do that again. It's possible to mark multiple boundaries at the same time. So we're just going to sequentially left click two regions on the central incisors. Right. The next way that we can interact is by sketching. So I'm going to take a off-angle view here of the canine, come back to the premolar, hold Shift, and then drag my mouse to sketch. Okay, you can continue your sketch by hovering over the last point, holding Shift, and left clicking and dragging. You can still continue to single click and extend your boundary, and you close the loop the same way. The points that you've clicked and drawn can be dragged by left clicking and dragging your mouse. Okay, occasionally, if you drag across a lot of features, the line may have trouble connecting, and you might get an orange segment like this. This means that for some reason, because this point is trying to go from here to here in this curved fashion, it didn't quite know how to get there. So sometimes you need to insert another point or just nudge one of the control points on either side. So that's the basics of boundary editing. At this time, the operator doesn't know which side of the boundary are the regions that you're interested in. So that's this boundary to region mode. When you click it, this button will turn blue and you'll get an eyedropper. Left click in the regions that are important and they will be filled in with a random color. Another way that we can interact with our regions is by painting. The brush radius is over here in the options. In the future there'll be some more options here. And whichever region you left click and paint on, that region will be extended. If you happen to paint from one region into another, those regions will be merged. When you go back to boundary editing, the operator will find the smoothest boundary around the area that you painted and reconnect the boundaries. So I'm going to hit cancel, and then we're going to do this again in the context of marking the splint outline. For the right side, I'm going to use the point-based editing, and then for the front and left side, I'm going to use sketch-based. So here I'm going to carefully move along about 2 millimeters above my height of contour. A note here, when I discuss the fact that this is a walking algorithm, it's trying to get from one point to another. The further distance that you go, the more difficulty it's going to have getting from point A to point B. I'm going to drag this back a little bit closer. You'll see that it makes a much better cut the shorter the point is. So you can make longer cuts, and sometimes the second cut will inform the first cut, and it can go back and link itself up. So if you notice like various parts of the line flashing from orange to blue, that's the operator trying different algorithms to get from point A to point B until it's tried all of its possibilities, and if it still fails, it'll leave you with an orange line. Occasionally when it goes through an embrasure, it gets a little confused like this, So it's nice to help it along by placing a point near the embrasures. Okay, before you go to extend, make sure the end point is green, and hold Shift and left click, and then I'll carefully draw the McDonald's arches as we continue our splint margin around to the palatal side. Okay, and now we're going to close our loop by hovering over the free end point and left clicking on the outer ring. Now we're going to indicate which area is our boundary. Now if you don't get the eyedropper here and you see red dots on your screen, it's because there might be some small failed cut segment. In the future, I'm going to try to put some automatic nudging, because usually it's just some small feature is confusing the walking algorithm. So in the future, I hope to put a little automatic retrying before complaining to the user. But after you resolve any red segments, select boundary to region again, and it'll let you choose the boundary that corresponds to the region that corresponds to the splint shell. Now we're going to press Compute Cut, and we'll notice that this line gets very sharp and precise. And as long as everything looks okay, you can commit. If it doesn't look okay, you can hit Cancel and try again. Great, and now marking your boundary is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and just run that back one more time without explaining it so you can see what it looks like. We've got a click-based flow, and my strategy is just click along, and if something doesn't look right, don't worry about it. Come back and fix it at the end. Just get your general idea out first, because sometimes as you're clicking around, the operators that it's trying in the background will fix it by the time you get there. Another thing that I worked very hard on with our developer is this kind of background processing where it's trying to work on something while still allowing you to keep going and interact with the tool. Okay, so got quite a bit of frustration here. So first thing I'm going to do is just nudge this point, maybe nudge that one. And it did it, but it kind of went deep down in there. So if you hover this line, you can click and then drag, and now everything looks good. We'll select our region with the eyedropper, and the colors are random, so that's a little bit of a fun gamble, is what color are you going to get. Compute the cut. And this is why there's a cancel option, is once in a blue moon, it doesn't fully cut. And so we'll try one more time. Okay. Great. And we will commit. So that's an introduction to the new cutting tool. It's a massive improvement in the precision of the cuts. I think at the moment it's a little bit of a step backwards in pure ease of use. But I think as we dial it in and get a bunch of you to test it, that will lead to an ultimately better experience. So starting version 0.6, I'm going to make us take the plunge, and I'm going to disable the old surface-based cutting for this new walking-based method, and I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback.